This session is about is the customer. We're going to talk about the customer, who's actually the user of all this technology that we're all been working on feverishly and spent the billions of dollars to develop. And to bring us onto this, we have Jerry Neece, who's from the Villages. Come on up, Jerry. And we have Eddie and Jean Rowe. Eddie and Jean Rowe, you come on up. And we have some more customers who actually have experience in riding. And we have also Steve LeVine, because this is called the voice of the customer, of the rider. And that voice, unfortunately, riders don't tend to have microphones and can speak out to everybody. They need the media to come out and let them know and let everybody know what that is and how the media fits into this discussion. So this is what we're going to talk about here in the next few minutes. So please have a seat and let's get started with our riders. Jerry, we're at the very beginning of this driverless vehicle revolution in which these things are mobility machines that just provide mobility. I've never experienced one that just moved me. I understand you have, that just give you rides. Tell us about it. What's the experience like?
Well, we've had a company called Voyage out at the Villages in San Jose, which is about 14 miles down the road, for almost 2 years now. And it's very interesting. Over the course of the 2 years, you'll find out that even seniors, and the average age of my community of 4,000 people is 74. We have 25% of the people that don't even have cell phones or smartphones or an email address. That market has adopted the cars. After a while, you see them driving around, and originally everybody was taking out their brownie cameras, those of you old enough to remember brown, and taking pictures for their grandchildren to say, look what a cool place I live in. But now you see, they have 4 cars and they're driving around. It's commonplace. So I think the acceptance will be rapid.
Let's go to Edie and Jean. What do you see? What's been your experience in riding?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Velodyne for hosting this event. It's events like this will get the word out, and for SAE International to be able to give us the opportunity to come here and speak today. I think we first had our ride last spring in Detroit. It was the first time we got to ride in an autonomous vehicle. We first thought maybe it was going to be great. We thought it was going to be scary. We didn't know, but it turned out it was fine. I think we just need to embrace this technology. We need to be able to utilize it to our advantages in order to have it, come to fruition.
I feel like I'm an example of someone who, unfortunately, digs their heels in against any new technology. So it's kind of ironic that I'm here, and to prove it, this is my cell phone. The fact that I'm here talking about autonomous vehicles and I've ridden in one, all that is, but the reality is why? It's like, not to sound self-centered, but I can look at how's it going to benefit me? And it's like, driving has never been like my favorite activity. And as I get older and I don't like driving at night, I can see how if it ever does come to our area, and we live in a rather rural area, Pennsylvania, I can see how it would really benefit me if I would be able to just have an autonomous car to hop in and do this, and it would keep my independence going for longer. And I could do my crossword puzzles. While instead of having to drive, I could do my crossword puzzles. So I'm looking at how it benefits me as probably that's the end. The consumers are going to look at that.
Right.
So if we are consumers, I'd like to stay with you a little bit and follow up a little bit. I mean, if we look at transportation's an intermediate good. It really has no good in and of itself. It really allows us to improve our quality of life. It's place, time, utility. We happen to be a certain place at a certain time. We want to get to someplace else at another time. Why? Because we want to be there. I'm here because I wanted to be here. Thank you. I actually wanted to be here, so I ended up, who knows what, I ended up taking Uber and flying and whatever, getting picked up and walking, and I got here. okay? But, you know, all those things are sort of just help me to my end. What kinds of end activities would you think that this technology would really help you participate more in or be of value to you that you just use? Thought about it that way, or?
Well, like I could see, like I could go to a movie after. I wouldn't have to go to the matinee. I could go to the movie after dark. You know, I could go to a night movie because I wouldn't have to worry about driving in the dark. I could see it could get me to the grocery store and back. I'm sure.
Yeah, I could see endless possibilities for this taking off and going places for people. People now today use a drive up and pick up your groceries. They call on your cell phone. They bring it out to you. Well, just send the autonomous vehicle with your groceries right to your house. You know, there could be all kinds of things. People can use it for, you know, getting around at amusement parks. You know, take you from the parking lot into the venue, things of that nature. I think she's right that we, as a consumer, have to have a reason to be able to want to switch to this technology. And I think we need a way of showing to us that this is viable for us. And I think that's where the market will take off then.
So we'll follow up on that viability in a second, but I'd like to ask you, where do you use it? What activities do you use it to do at the villages?
Well, you got to remember I'm a native Californian. You have to pry me out of my car with a crowbar. But what I found it most convenient for, and I've probably ridden somewhere between 35 and 50 times, is the convenience factor. In our community, we have a clubhouse. We'll have events there. We don't have enough parking spaces. So for the convenience factor, I'll just call up the car, and in 5 minutes, I'm down there in front of the clubhouse and not having to hassle with the traffic problems and the parking problems. I think for the seniors in our community, we've seen the biggest reason we use it is the convenience factor.
So you point out, I think, you know, the biggest hurdle with respect to this technology, it's not going to be put out there in a vacuum. It's going to be put out there in competition with all the other things that exist. Scooters, driving your cars, who knows what, Uber, Airlift, or whatever they call it, or whatever, and all those things. How do you see this stacking up to the competition? You know, so that you end up taking it as opposed to saying, no, it's not quite good enough for me. I'm going to continue to have my chauffeur take me or something.
Right. We don't have any chauffeurs out there.
Well, I thought this. Everybody's so rich here that everybody had chauffeurs. I'm sorry. I didn't
repeat the question really quickly.
Yeah. No, but compared to the competition, you mentioned one aspect of the competition, convenience. Is there anything else? Is there price? Do I have price? Is it affordable? Is it environmentally sound? Do those attributes mean anything to you relative to what you do?
Right. Well, we've sort of looked at some pricing models with Voyage, and I think they'll all be very convenient for seniors. I've actually, in response to a question from them, tracked how much it costs me to drive the 1.6 miles down to, you know, the clubhouse and back in my Ford Fiesta. Arrived at a cost and found out that the cost of the driverless vehicle would probably be only 20 to 25% above that cost. The convenience factor far outweighs that cost and the wear and tear on my car.
We'll get back to that because we've sort of left Steve in a lurch here because I want to bring him in.
Right.
With respect to putting out the voice. You are the voice of the customer to other potential customers. How do you think the media and so on is participating in this process of either properly or improperly being the voice of the customer?
Yeah. Well, I think it's thank you, by the way, for including me on this panel, and thanks to Velodyne, and I really appreciated Marta's comments to the last panel. This is a live experiment we're watching, and it's very dynamic, it's moving very fast, and the perceptions, what's reality, what people's aspirations, both technologically and investors, companies, their aspirations, commercially. We're seeing these, go very, very fast, and what is reality, what is perceived reality, that's changing very fast. So the idea of a year or two ago, last year's summit right here that of level 5 coming, in a reasonable amount of time. That's changed over the last year. We know that's not coming in the next decade. It may never come. And so I think the media is moving as fast as it can, and being realistic. What can it do? Now that we know, it's conventional wisdom now. It's not really out there in the media as much as it should be. What I just said, we are not getting to level 5 very soon. So yes, in a closed system like what's described here, yes. So we can get Jerry can get picked up and taken down to the clubhouse because he doesn't want to. He says he doesn't have a chauffeur. I don't believe him. But instead of the chauffeur, he's in his Ford Fiesta. He's going in that driverless car. But for the rest, right out there, so how does the industry sell? This is the question for me. And then how does the media describe a world of 3.5 or level 4 driverless technology? What does that look like? So if you've invested billions of dollars, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and these companies for a world of driverless vehicles, but you're only going to get to level 4, how do you sell that? And how do you explain that?
I almost can't resist, though. There seems to be a lot. Is there confusion out there about this technology from the user perspective? Do you see any confusion, or do you understand it perfectly? Or
I don't understand anything about it, and I don't really I don't need to understand it. In my mind, I just need to have it work for me when I want it. I don't really. It doesn't matter to me how it works, as long as it comes and gets me to where I'm going. That would make me happy. Now, Eddie has a different approach. He wants to.
I'm a little more techie than she is, yes.
Yeah.
But, I don't know how the internet works, but I like it. and I use my email every day, and it goes to where I send it. And I think that's what needs to come about. It's also going to offer independence, to people who love to drive like me. I don't mind driving, but, I want to have that flexibility to know that maybe I'm going to be able to be independent longer because of this technology.
Yeah.
It's going to be able to do for me what maybe I won't be able to do in 10 years from now. I hope it doesn't take 20 years or 10 years for it to develop. I hope it develops faster than that. I'd like to see it in our lifetime.
Well, I'd like to. I shouldn't voice my opinion, but I just think there's an enormous amount of confusion out there, and I do understand that this session is sponsored by the SAE. But I absolutely, totally dislike the SAE levels, and I continue to write about it. Why? Because there's no semantics in that. What's a level 5? I mean, I don't. Do you know what a level 5 is? Do you know what a level 5 is? Do you care what a level 5 is?
No.
I mean, what the hell is a level 4? I mean, at least what I heard you say is I'm someplace at a certain time, and I want to go someplace else at another time. I want to be taken.
Right. But wait. But this is important because I just explained that we're not getting to where you think we're going. What you just described is not happening, right? I'm going to have this independence. Isn't that going to be great? It's not happening. It's not happening. And so knowing level 5 means that what you want to have happen happens.
Does anybody know what level 5 is? Anybody in the audience? Does somebody want to stand up with a mic? I mean, supposedly it's something everywhere. I can't even drive my own car everywhere. I mean, even though I see the Jeep commercial driving down the stream or a whatever driving up the Great Wall, I can't do that. So it's not. The idea is there's a design domain where there is a mobility need to get from A to B, whatever, and within that, and that's what people tend to suggest. But if we're not going to be taken from A to B, then that means I can't have the extra drink in my restaurant, does it, or not? Maybe we'll bring the audience in. Whoa.
Get it back to
Okay, because what they're experiencing is level 5. Level 5 is when there isn't a human driver. And that's correct? That's what you write in? That is level 5.
Then I've been there.
But you know, you're confined to this certain area at this time that's been pre-mapped, and the whole world right now is getting mapped. The whole world is getting mapped so that these cars can use it because it helps. It helps enormously. So I just want to counter what Steve said, because I do believe it's coming. It's going to take longer than we thought. And there's going to be, like I said, cars are going to go slowly. They don't go 65 miles per hour in the villages, right?
No, 25.
No. And that's because to drive 30, say, compared to 60, it's 100 times more complicated. Maybe 1,000 times more complicated to do those predictions and to keep you safe and to, declare that you will be safe. And that's why transparency is so important in education. And what we've done with the 5 diamond systems is we try to describe them very carefully. Level 5 is no driver in there, and it's by a machine. And typically they have a monitor that's inside that's connected to a human. So you always have, in fancy cars right now, they have something driver assist. You could poke a button and you can talk to a real person. Well, in these initial and maybe forever autonomous cars, they're going to have ways to talk to a real person as they're rolled out. So I think that there is great hope. There's a lot of challenge. There's a lot of challenge ahead, but I would say there's thousands and thousands of engineers working on it. And I don't think AI is going to solve everything. It's going to take more than just AI, but eventually all the scientists and the vision technologists will meet the challenges. And then meanwhile, okay, so that's meeting the challenges to get up there. But meanwhile, we can do some things for consumer cars which can prevent accidents, like avoiding the pedestrians and bicyclists and putting on the brake. I backed up the other day and my car did put on the brake, or I would have hit a car. Now I was only going 1 mile an hour. I was going so slow, but it did prevent something that could have happened bad. So I just want to give you hope.
Thank you, Mark.
Because a lot of us want it.
So if we're not going to have level 5, what are we going to have, and when are we going to have it? Do you have any?
Let me just. Yes. So one hopes there are aspirations that we get to level 5. What you have is not level 5. It's level 5. It's level 2 in a closed system. That's what it is. It is not. Level 5 does not exist, Marta. Does not exist. Doesn't exist.
No. I know. And SAE, according to SAE standards, and Mersha, is Mersha here? Mersha can vouch for it, that level 5 is no driver in the system. Now, it is geographically confined. There's no doubt about that. But I don't know where you get your information, Steve, that this is not level 5. It is. It is.
Right. Well.
Okay.
So, if
I've
actually ridden in a car.
We're going to go to the audience in 2 minutes, okay? Because I think we got the audience riled up here, which is good.
I've actually
which
ridden
is
in a
what we're
car.
trying to do here, which is the confusion that exists.
With nobody in it but me. I was in the back seat. I got to tell you, the hardest thing for me is watching that steering wheel move with nobody touching it. And that's irrelevant whether there's somebody else in the car, an engineer, or nobody. But I am confident enough after all the rides I've done, and it's a much better driver than me, and I'm totally comfortable letting it go. What I'd like to see the media concentrate on is less on the technology and more on the user experience and the use cases we've discovered, because that's what we saw sold it out at the villages, was telling people how they could use the car, not what the technology was behind it.
And I guess that's the point that I was trying to make, and I just wish that we would use some terms that mean something as opposed to level 1, 2, 3, 4, 18, 26, or who knows what.
Right.
And that in fact have some meaning to it. And you explained that driverless, there was nobody behind the steering wheel, which gave you that. I always like to use the elevator analogy when I talk about the mobility providing. This is just like using an elevator. You go someplace, a door opens, you get in, somebody else might get in with you, a door closes, you get taken to where you want, the door opens, you walk out, and you forget about it. You know, just like you're in Brooklyn, you forget about it. and it provides you that mobility. And that's some of the aspirations that I think maybe you're reflecting that you would like to see. You don't, unfortunately, want to know about the LiDAR. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking for you and I shouldn't speak for you. Of course they want to know about the LiDAR, but certainly not cameras or how. They just want to know that it works.
Right.
And we've been talking about trust all morning, the trust. And the trust is in these folks that's important, and it's really important for the media to get it to a point where it's the customer, because if the customers don't show up, nobody's going to buy the LiDARs.
Right.
That's right.
Sorry.
Right.
So we are not going to go to questions 18 seconds before we're supposed to.
Well, we
Did
can.
we generate any questions from the
Alan,
audience?
working it like a classroom. I love it. So, again, do we have questions in the audience? Right up front
Come
here.
on, students,
I'll do
let's
it.
go.
I got it. I
Stand
got
up.
it. Here you go.
If you would not mind giving your name,
Sure.
if you don't.
My name's John Rashid. I'm CTO at Autometric. We haven't met yet, but we will afterwards. Anyways, the question I had was, or not question, the suggestion I would have is when we look at a closed track versus, which I think a community at a golf course or a private community, can you then, if you call it level 5, then take it onto a regular street road, like in San Francisco, like what Zoox is doing? So so I agree with what Alan is saying here, is that we need to have additional qualifications. When we say it's level 5, is it a closed loop or a closed track, or is it an open environment? Because that way we can set the right perspective for an individual. I know individuals who've driven Highway 17 down to Santa Cruz in a Tesla, fully autonomous, and they did have an accident. And it wasn't necessarily because of the car, something happened. Boulder rolled down the road, hit the car, those situations. I would just suggest that we want to put some context around that. Yeah,
There's always going to be multiple qualifications. There's always going to be, you can't go 100 miles and you have to stay in this area. So there's always going to be qualifications. But as far as I understand, Murcha, who's our head of validation and control, and last year he was president of SAE, he can answer about the levels. What do you want? Go ahead.
So,
What's level 5?
well, if you go by the SAE definition, which, by the way, has been embraced by NHTSA, so we're not debating here a professional organization type of definition. We're discussing maybe NHTSA's input in transforming that into a legislation, actually. So, and I think strictly from the definition perspective, Martha is right. But the limitations of that initial definition have been acknowledged. So we are working now on enhancing them with the aspects that you mentioned, which are many. As Martha mentioned, speed is one. The operational domain definition and constraints related to that is another one. So everybody's right. Fortunately or unfortunately. So
Within the levels, there is an operational design domain that doesn't ever seem to make it into the press for some reason. And the operational design domain is the absolutely critical piece. And that's really the defining the service level and where it's going to provide. We have another question, yes.
It's on.
Jerry, you mentioned the experience. What would you do to improve the experience going forward?
Well, in my community, I think it is sort of a user thing. It's hard for some of our seniors to get in the cars without help. That's something that I would like to see addressed. But I don't know. It's working out very well out there. I mean, we just take them for granted. We see the cars driving around the roads. The fact that they got the little thing that looks like Kentucky Fried Chicken on the roof is no concern to anybody. It's just another car. What I think was most favorable about our environment is we have a captive herd of 50 deer and a bunch of wild turkeys, both of which I nearly ran over this morning on the way over here. Those present challenges for cars that I think Voyage was very happy to discover.
Eddie and Gene, what would you like to see improved? Follow up on that, or what do you see as?
My concerns is like from thinking about whether it is ever truly going to benefit me on a regular basis where we live is we're a rather rural area. I mean, in Pennsylvania, like compared to this, it's very rural. And like some of our roads don't have lines on. And I mean, I can just see that there's a lot of challenges. Is it ever going to happen within my lifetime? I mean, but assuming I live to 100, that's a lot of time yet. But yeah, so I guess my biggest concern is it going to happen locally for us? I mean, I had my first Uber ride from the airport here. You know, in my lifetime, I've had 2 taxi rides. So the Uber makes 3 now. So, you know, so that's my concern.
Right. And in addition to that, we have horse and buggies where we are, you know, so let's maybe create a different scenario for
road
cars
apples.
to deal with. Not to mention the road apples on the road, we call them. But I think, you know, people are starting to embrace it slowly. And I think that's good with the adaptive cruise control, the lane keep assist, things like that. It's all bringing people on board. My own sister, who's 7 years older than me, she just bought a new car because it had lane keep assist. You know, and so people are looking to be safer and want to be safer as they get older, and they realize that. And I think as long as we keep rolling out technology slowly and easily, you know, people will come around to it.
I think those are really important comments because as I look at these systems, the real value is to people who either can't or don't wish to drive a car. That's the fundamental value. Their mobility in most places, rural or even San Francisco or even Brooklyn and Queens, is really limited compared to those of us that have who knows how many cars in a garage that can drive ourselves. And that's the real opportunity. And listening and having the voice of them and having the design of these systems to be able to serve them and maybe serve them affordably through ride sharing, save the environment, do congestion, do all the things that we've heard about today is a real opportunity. So thank you for giving the customer a voice here.
Well, thank you for the voice. Ladies and gentlemen, Alain, Kornhauser, and the customers of AV, thank you very much. Smarter Driving Cars is the podcast if you want to hear it. And congratulations on the Uber ride. Did you rate them?